On this week's episode, the bad boys are back. A concerning trend of game delays. And it's time once again for a TV update. All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glasser from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, the Lakers Fast Break, and Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Thank you so much for listening to all of our great programs. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. He's our own bad boy of Pop Culture Cosmos. You got to check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.wordpress.com, his awesome podcast, Topicocalypse, and of course his book, which you got to get now, Congratulations, You Suck. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. Bad boys, what you going to do? What you going to do when they come for you, Josh?
That would be assuming people actually do come for them, like in the movie theaters. You know, they come to watch the movie. I'm curious to hear what those box office numbers are.
Well, there might actually be some decent box office numbers for the movie when Bad Boys 3 comes out this weekend on a Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend. So we're hoping for good numbers for that movie. I know I was speaking to Troy from one of our latest stations that latest networks that we're going to be on, Discover Community Radio, and I want to give him a big shout out. He was saying maybe we're a little bit too tepid on its long-term prognostications. I'm thinking that maybe it will do well, but we're going to go ahead and talk about that in a minute. As far as Bad Boys 3 for this weekend, also as well, we're also going to talk about Doolittle with Robert Downey Jr., and it's going to be something that's little, but we'll talk about that here in a second as well. Plus, we've got Jessica Boggs from the TVRatingsGuide.com. She's coming up here in a bit with part one of her January TV update. Also as well, we've got not one, not two, but again, 3 great interviews from PepCom and CES 2020, along with my good friend, Mr. Jamie Monroy of Game Source. We interviewed the great folks at One More, JLab Audio, and Puro Sound, and we're going to hear from them on today's show as well. Plus, at the back end, Josh and I are going to talk about a disturbing trend among video games already set for this new decade. But first, my friend, it is the movies coming out this weekend at the box office. It is probably going to be most likely led by Bad Boys 3, which has that nostalgia factor on high. About 18 years after the last Bad Boys movie that came out, this one centers around both Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, with the characters close to retirement, but still in the process of trying to go ahead and stop one more bad guy before they do. Although rumors have it, if you watch the movie, that may set up for something in the future as well. So I want to hear your thoughts, man, on Bad Boys 3. Were we a little bit too hard on it on our last opinions when we talked about our last impressions of Bad Boys 3?
I don't know. I think that we were honest about it. I'm not sure. Cruel would be a great word to describe it. We were not optimistic about it, but I don't think we were saying it was going to fail. We said it just judging by, previous attempts at making movies based on like movies from the 90s. I think that's what we're basing our things on.
Because the original was 25 years ago, and the fact is now that it's supposed to, it's looking to do right around 40 to 45 million for the 4-day weekend. I'm hoping it will do that well. It'll be a decent sign for the box office. Might not turn a profit, though, because it does have a $90 million price tag as far as from a production standpoint before any marketing, advertising, or anything else comes in there. So worldwide, it would have to probably do between 325, 350 million before you can say it's going to turn a profit on that movie. But I'm hoping for some good things. At least a good start would be something special for it. The reviews are actually okay to decent, getting between 5, 6, and 7s out there. So it's not doing too badly. For the most part, it's got above a 50% Metacritic rating. So I think more than half of the reviewers that are seeing it are enjoying it. And then also as well, they're giving it a decent score. So that could bode well for the movie this weekend at the box office. Plus, it's a type of film that a lot of audiences out there really kind of enjoy as a nice popcorn flick, outside of the serious movies that they've probably been maybe hearing about with all the Golden Globes and Oscar contenders out there. This could be, as you and I talk about a lot, a nice little palate cleanser for them if they want to go ahead and check that out this weekend. So Bad Boys 3 could do pretty good at the box office. Again, looking about 40 to even maybe 50 million this weekend for the 4-day weekend at the box office. So hopefully some decent things there for Martin Lawrence and also Will Smith. And you and I talked about it. Outside of Aladdin, Will Smith's career has not really gone well in the past few years. So this could be a good sign for him going forward to maybe rebirth his star status as a leading man. But there's another movie out there with a leading man that just came off of a big time high in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's Robert Downey Jr. And this weekend also is the debut for Doolittle. I'll tell you what, this movie is being raked over the coals, and this could be one of the biggest busts, not only of this year, but of any year. It's about $180 million production budget. It got delayed at least more than once, and it's got such a high ticket value and such poor ratings, right around, I think, a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes, and really, a 13% on a 28% around Metacritic, and on 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's setting itself up to be a big disaster for Universal.
Can I just say that I love how you introed this topic by like both hesitating and giggling about it at the same time? Like that really just gives me zero faith in this movie being good in any aspect.
Well, it's kind of like, as we talked about before, as you and I like to drive by and we see the car crash, so we can't help but stare as we drive on by. Doolittle is probably a film version of a car crash that you're just going to go ahead and not watch now. You might hear about how big of a disaster it will be in the coming days, because you're going to hear how much money it's going to lose over the course of time. But this movie, I guess, was just a cursed production from the get-go. A lot of reshooting, a lot of stuff that was being done after the fact. I know Robert Downey Jr., the most news that he's made in the promo work that he's done for Doolittle has been more about the Marvel Cinematic Universe than about Doolittle itself. So that tells you right there, everybody is not really caring about what Doolittle's all about. They're just caring about if Robert Downey Jr. will ever come back to Iron Man. And we know he's going to be doing some voice work for the What If series, but he's also hinted at, if it was a right story, coming back to the Iron Man character in another movie as well. So that was probably more interesting than the actual promo or any work that was done for Doolittle. So that tells you right there that Doolittle is setting itself to be one of the biggest disasters, not only of this year, but possibly this new decade as well.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think that this, obviously, Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes films have been a huge success, right? I mean, maybe not
Those
huge,
are pretty much the only ones that he's made that have been successful over the course of time that's not MCU related, correct?
Correct.
In this time frame.
So do you think that the obsession with Iron Man, are you going back to being Iron Man? One, I feel like he's now typecasted. It's going to take him. Will he ever break out of that? I don't know. But do you think that this ruins the chance of making a successful ending to the Sherlock Holmes trilogy?
No, I think he'll go back to it. And I think there will be a ending of this trilogy, whether or not it's with Guy Ritchie, but I think him and Jude Law will go back to it. I heard it's in some sort of development stage. I forget at what point where it's at, but I think they are going to go back to it at some point with him and Jude Law, and hopefully Guy Ritchie as well. Will it have that same magic the third time around? We're going to see. Sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes with Bad Boys 3, it could work. So you don't know exactly where it will land. But the first two have been a big success, but they've been pretty much the only successful movies Robert Downey Jr. has really had over the course of time he's been working on the MCU movies. So that's a bigger issue, I think, for all these MCU actors, is that we know them so much as far as being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and outside of a couple, hits here and there, there's been a big problem for a lot of these actors. I mean, Chris Pratt has done well outside the MCU for the most part. Chris Evans with Knives Out has a big hit. I mean, there's very few exceptions right now, and it seems to be more the norm. I mean, we've talked about before at length about Chris Hemsworth and all the issues he's had outside doing movies outside of the MCU.
Yeah, well, think about it this way: like these actors, a lot of people, a good percentage of people go to the movies and they only go for these franchise films, right? They go to see the Marvel films, the Star Wars films, the Disney films, whatever they might be. So when an actor tries to go out and do something outside of that, it's not going to do so well, because people don't really go see regular movies as often, unless it's on Netflix. So I think you're kind of, when you break into the MCU, I'm sure even like Benedict Cumberbatch is going to have that problem, right? Outside of Sherlock, which is already, highly developed as a franchise, I think that if he goes out to do like regular films again, unless it's something that's, an Oscar contender, I don't think that he's going to do as well as he once did.
Well, Scarlett Johansson has not only one, but 2 Oscar nominations for Jojo Rabbit and Marriage Story, which probably will both turn a nice tidy little profit. Are they going to end up being box office champions? No. And that's something that she has also had to deal with as well. This fact that, she's had some movies that haven't done as well as projected, trying to bank off her success in the MCU. But again, critically, she's had some great choices, and we're seeing it now with being one of the few individuals out there that has ever earned a double nomination within the same year. So kudos to her on that. But you know what? As I told you and Jamie earlier this week, I was venting hard on some of the Oscar nominations and some things that were really very disappointing to me as far as the way it was structured this year. So I've got a lot of things to say I've got a lot of things I would love to say, but we'll do that closer to the actual Oscars itself, because there's a lot of things you want to say about the Oscar nominations, but a lot of it was already said on social media this week. But it is going to be a decent weekend for the box office here on Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend. We're hoping for some good stuff going on this weekend at the box office. What are your thoughts out there on Bad Boys 3? Are you going to check that movie out, or are you going to check out the impending disaster known as Dolittle? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that, or any other movie that you want to check out this weekend. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on how your movie experience was. Let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, coming up next, we got our good friends. Jamie Monroy from Game Source and myself. We're going to go ahead and interview Tyler Runyon of One More at PepCom at CES 2020 right after the break. And then right after that, it's Jessica Boggs from the TVRatingsGuide.com. She's got her January TV update, and she's going to talk about more what's going on, because the Television Critics Association meetings are going on as we speak. So we want to hear what's going on a little bit about that, some of the changes that are taking place within the networks, and a little bit more opinion on what's going on with television as well. That's coming up, and Josh and I will be back later in the show to talk about more. And also after that, don't forget, we've got Alex Silverman of Puro Sound, Ben Nichols of JLab Audio. Those interviews are on tap as well from PepCon and CES during the course of the show. And on the back end, Josh and I are going to talk about some of the game delays and why that trend is happening right about now. This is the PCC Multiverse. All right, my friend. And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. And we're back to close out the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. My friend, before we head on out, I want to thank Tyler Runyon of One More, Alex Silverman of Puro Sound, Ben Nichols of JLab Audio, and of course, Jessica Boggs from the TV Ratings Guide, and also Jessica's show for her January TV update, Part 1. She's also going to be back on the Pop Culture Cosmos show on Monday with Part 2 of her January TV update. But before we head on out, my friend, I do want to ask you real quick, But before we head on out, I want to go ahead and note as well what's come up during the course of our recording, and that's some news that Better Call Saul is going to be was approved for a sixth and final season. So that's going to end after sixth season for Better Call Saul, and more speculation on the Watchmen TV series for HBO. Right now, according to the higher ups at HBO, that is probably because of the fact that showrunner Damon Lindelof is not interested in continuing the series. That the series itself, HBO's Watchmen, which has garnered such acclaim and popularity, unfortunately may not see a second season for that. So that's kind of disappointing right there for you. Any thoughts on that, Josh? On Better Call Saul or The Watchmen?
Okay, so I have not really watched Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad. That's a show I keep meaning to get into. Have not seen it yet, so I don't have a lot of thoughts on that. As for Watchmen, it really does surprise me because they picked up a lot of momentum going into the end of the first season. So Damon Lindelof, like I'm curious if there were like restrictions placed on the source material, what it was that after finishing that first season so strong would make him want to not make another season. Was something else offered to him, or what's going on there? But you think even if he didn't want to do it, there would be plenty of others that would be eager to pick up the mantle after him. What are your thoughts on that?
You're right. There is something there because he has all the cachet to walk into HBO's offices and say, you know what, I want another season of Watchmen. And instantly he gets it because of the fact that it's been so popular and it's garnered such acclaim and it's been well thought of around pretty much all pop circles at this all pop culture circles at this point in time. So I don't know. It's just at this. All I can say is it's up to Damon Lindelof. I know he has been quoted as saying that he's stepping away from it, and that if another writer could step in to go ahead and pen a second season, but it would really have to be something special. And I think HBO says, you know what, we're not interested in that. We're going to have it. It's either done by you or done by no one else. I think maybe sometime they'll probably give it a year or two off. Maybe they'll go ahead and get back into it. I would like to see that. I think the pressure of HBO Max garnering, and what's coming up for them as far as a streaming service is concerned, I think that will probably constitute maybe a little bit more cashola, a little bit more incentives, things to maybe hopefully get Damon Lindelof some impetus to go ahead and try and come up with another season of The Watchmen. I think maybe some time off, some time away, maybe we'll go ahead and rejuvenate the juices right there going for another season of The Watchmen. But last but not least, before we head on out, my friend, I wanted to talk to you real quick about some game delays. I know you've been hearing it in the news this past week. The Final Fantasy VII Remake got bumped. The Avengers got bumped, and Cyberpunk 2077, which a lot of people have been looking towards to, that got bumped. The Cyberpunk and the Avengers are now been pushed back from the spring to September, and Final Fantasy VII's been pushed back a month. But it is still, it's not too much time, but it is still a month. Your thoughts on all these game delays and the disturbing trend? I mean, we saw it early on. We saw it towards the end of 2019. When some of the games projected for this year, like The Last of Us 2, were also bumped. I want to hear your thoughts want to hear your thoughts on these game delays and what it means for us gamers and what it means for also the industry as well.
I think that there's this, okay. I have a few thoughts on this. One, I think that these companies are pushing it mighty close to the release of the new consoles. So I keep wondering, like, is anybody going to care? Because Cyberpunk got pushed back to September, Final Fantasy got pushed back to April, Avengers also got pushed back to September, if I remember correctly. That's cutting it really close. Around that time, a lot of people are going to be saving up for these new consoles, for these new gaming experiences. So my hope would be that these three big releases are going to also be released in some form on these next-gen consoles. But, from the developer's point of view, I'm wondering if, like, they're fearing the backlash. They're fearing the backlash of, like a Rockstar, right? How they faced a bunch of kind of angry internet people over the fact that, there's reports of burnout. Same thing with, Telltale, right? The rumors are they shut down because there's a lot of burnout and a lot of bad publicity. I'm curious if these companies are facing that same type of thing. But if not, if they're just trying to make a better quality game, I can commend that. But at the same time, I think it's foolish to announce a release date, almost a year ahead of your projected release date. Wait, a lot of companies can wait like, 3 to 6 months before the game comes out to finally announce a release date. So maybe they overshot what they're trying to get to, and now they're kind of afraid of what the backlash might be. But right now, even you look at what the internet is, the backlash is already getting pretty bad. So I don't know. Like, I don't think there's any like safe spot to do something like that. And if you make a release date, you should stick to it. And if you're not sure you're going to be able to put out a quality product by then, if you think that burnout's going to be an issue, then you shouldn't make any release date announcements until you're within 3 months of your goal.
I agree with you, my friend, on that 100%, because I think these companies still have the same mindset that they did back in 2010, 2011, even earlier than that, where pre-ordering was such a vital part of the industry. You had to get your pre-orders in, so you had to know what was going on, so you had to have a date in mind already. Now these days you don't. You don't need to pre-order games. You don't need to go walk into a GameStop and pre-order. You just go ahead and order it that day on Amazon. You walk into a Walmart, you walk into a Target, you go to Target.com, Walmart.com, you go to any of these internet outlets, GameStop.com, you go anywhere you want now and you can order it and you'll get it. Okay, and or you can just go ahead and get it right off the marketplaces for PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. You can order it right off there and download it. So you don't need to go ahead and go to all that trouble. The only gamers that really need to worry about that are ones interested in the collector's editions and things of that nature, where those sell out rather quickly for the most part. So I get those. But for the ones that are just regular gamers like you and I, where we don't buy the collector's editions for the most part, I think it's probably just something that we don't even worry about. Just tell us, like you said, 3 months ahead of time so we can plan. 2 months ahead of time so we can plan, so we know something's coming up. That's usually the only time frame that we need. That's when usually people start saving the money to go ahead and buy these games, which is within a 2 to 3 month span. So that's a great time to go ahead when you have a much better idea that you're going to go ahead and and announce a release date at that point in time. So I tell you what, I couldn't be in more agreement with what you were saying, man. 2 to 3 months is just all we need for the most part.
Yeah, like you said, especially now since people are preloading these games, they're buying them before they come out on like their digitally, right? And they're preloading them onto their consoles. GameStop, there's barely any incentive to go pick up a physical game anymore, though I do love physical games. There's not, they don't do like the midnight release parties barely anymore, and
there's no reason to go ahead and pre-order them 6 to 9 months ahead of time.
No, exactly. And so like GameStop used to make a lot of revenue off pre-orders, but now with these, the digital console and GameStop's going out of business, like there's not really a need to rush things out, because every store usually has their own special incentives to buy the game anyway. So why are you, I just don't understand what the point is in rushing a release date, because if people really want to play the game, they're going to buy it regardless of when it comes out. But just don't. If you have something and then you delay it, it's going to create bad faith in the game, and that's not what you want coming out of the gate.
No, it isn't at all, and that's disappointing to see all these game delays, because, like I said, it only creates a little bit bad. It only creates bad buzz for your game, and especially in the case of Cyberpunk 2077, and also the Final Fantasy VII remake. Even though that's a month in Final Fantasy VII, that's still a month after this long delay that you've already had of waiting for this game to be remade and to show it out there anyways, because there's been already a lot of anticipation for that game and all the years now that we've been waiting for it. With the Avengers, that game right there it hasn't had the best buzz already, and that needs good word of mouth, and unfortunately a delay is not going to give it that. With Cyberpunk 2077, which has gotten, for the most part, there has been a couple minor things, but for the most part, it's been getting some really good buzz, obviously from the company that made The Witcher 3, coming off a hot streak there. You got to go ahead and keep it rolling, and unfortunately, a delay kind of, just jerks that momentum to the side, so to speak. So I will say this, that when it comes to these manufacturers and these developers and these publishers, you got to go ahead and be more wise about announcing your product. You don't have to go ahead and do 6 to 9 months to a year out anymore. Those days are gone. 3 months is fine for most individuals out there. And, if you're worried about selling the products, those collector's editions, whatnot, they usually sell out within 7 to 10 days anyways, for the most part, if the game itself is hot. So I don't know. I just think the mindset has to change so these delays get less and less. And really, because that's the most disappointing thing to gamers. This polishing excuse that I've heard every single time. We need more time to polish the game, need more time to polish the game. There's only so much polish you can do. Just go ahead and, like I said, tell us within 90 days, and that's all we need. What are your thoughts out there on these game delays? Share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. My friend, it's been a great episode once again. I really want to thank you for joining us. Before we go on out, Sony, they did it again. They're bowing out of E3. Your thoughts on that, especially on a year where they're supposed to announce a new console?
They have something up their sleeve, obviously, but this is. I don't think we're ever going to see them back at E3 again. They've kind of made their statement. They don't really. E3 doesn't really align with their sale, their sales strategy. How long till Microsoft and Bethesda and Ubisoft back out? I don't know. Hopefully they stick around for a while. But Sony obviously has a plan. They're using GamesCon. Will we ever see the conference format again with Sony? I don't know. I have my doubts about it. They're kind of spreading their release, the announcement of their content or the trailer releases of their content out over, all these different game conferences. But is this going to work out for them? We'll see. But I'm really doubting we're ever going to see them back at E3 again. And I'm curious, what their plan is, because it feels like this close to releasing a new console, the more publicity you get, the better. So what is their sales strategy? What are they thinking? What's going on in their heads right now?
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it one more time. E3 is the best place to go for not just the games media, but for the general media around the world, because they go ahead, especially to report to investors, report to the general public about what's coming up and what's exciting in the video game world more than any other venue for video games. This is the place to be. And for Sony not to be a part of it again is another shameful thing. One more time. Hopefully they've got some great plans for the PS5, but unfortunately E3 won't be a part of it. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great